So welcome again. I'm going to very quickly, I think, just start with our mission. So Berkeley PTA Council's mission is to help PTAs build institutional knowledge to facilitate interaction between schools' PTAs, to disseminate information, and to encourage and facilitate outreach to other community groups. And so we all come together tonight for those purposes. And again, very much appreciate Brazil and Christy signing on tonight to give us sort of like, I know you guys have a working group going. Maybe you guys can give us a bit of, maybe Brazil, you can give us a little update or, let us know where things are moving in terms of the working group that you guys have.
Sure. So thank you for having us. I'm Brazil McIntyre, the program supervisor for the Learns program, and my counterpart, Christy Resigno, who is off and able to type interact with us via typing or the chat. She supervises. She's the extended learning manager for the BUSD, and so she helps supervise Learns as well as the Bears program. And so with our work with the PTA collaborative, we've been able to this year kind of focus on have our kind of meetings scoped out so that we have some topics that are kind of always relevant. And we've been very fortunate enough to have, a great partnership with that group. I don't know how much they've shared with you. I think that was the assumption that all of our kind of meetings were kind of translated over to you all. Yes, Scott, thank you. So I don't know. I mean, we talk about enrichments, we talk about enrollment, we talk about summer, we talk about surveys and data and things that, you all are lifting in your own school sites, PTAs, and really bringing it to us so that we're able to, really try to problem solve and figure out what things we need to do and what happens next, in a nutshell.
We're so glad to have you here today. I mean, this is such an important topic for so many families, especially in our elementary schools. So I very much appreciate having you guys here. Scott, were you about to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was I was just going to summarize. So I'm Scott Hoffmeister, and I'm currently the Willard treasurer, was the Emerson treasurer, and have been part of the collaborative since it, thank you, Merlin, since it started. And so Rita, I just wanted to, and Brazil, feel free to correct me. I think that two of the topics that are have been, high on the agenda in our discussions are, one is about capacity in the program, trying to minimize the understanding the wait lists and bringing down the wait lists. I think item number two is trying to ensure that families know earlier in the summer whether they're on the they got in or not. And then third has been an ongoing conversation about the PTA run after school enrichment programs, and how I think that the parents are kind of exhausted by that, and the the district definitely feels the challenge that when there are gaps on the PTA side, that they can end up holding the bag at the site level, which is not their favorite thing. And so we've been talking about, could there be some kind of roadmap for a merger of those, bringing the enrichment into the programs. So that's still an ongoing point. And Brazil, I hope I'm not stealing too much of your thunder by saying that one of the things that Christy and Brazil feel like they can do for this coming year is to inform families who have applied at least a first round of notifications. What is it, Brazil? Is it the end of June?
Yeah, by the end of June, we're going
Right.
for this year, at least for the
Oh, how
first.
Which
fantastic.
is just a fantastic improvement, like way better than. So I definitely want to commend Christy and Brazil and the team for really working hard to move that forward.
Thank you, Scott. That was fantastic and very much appreciated. Definitely
Thank
captures
you.
That is,
the work we've been doing.
Yep.
And Lindsay just
that,
wrote
I know that
outreach
really,
for summer started months earlier this year as well.
I'm sorry, I think I missed the first part of what you said.
Oh, I said Lindsay wrote that outreach for summer school has started months earlier this year.
Yeah, we have, it usually is around March, but it is a lot, it's a lot more thoughtful, I think, this year in how it's being disseminated, and it's a pretty good plan that we have, you know, to make sure that everyone is getting the information and able to access all of the things, you know, in order to get their students signed up or you know, identified for summer school. And then this summer, you know, last summer was our
I mean,
go ahead.
no, I was going to ask a little bit different question about school year programming and what the waitlist situation is like these days. You know, I know this probably varies a lot by school, and I was just curious. I know the staffing has been a major issue since we came back from the pandemic, and I was just curious if that was something that you could share a little bit about.
Yeah, definitely. We do have still wait lists, unfortunately, at most school sites. And that definitely is sort of impacted just with the staffing. We've been very vigilant in trying to process, you know, our new applicants as quickly as possible to really get them onboarded and into, you know, our programs. I think that there is a lot of just kind of real life reality when that comes when it comes to hiring folks, because you know we definitely are constantly reaching out and looking, you know, high and low for folks that are interested. That was one of the things we also discussed with the the PTA collaborative is, you know, really trying to use our network to find people that are interested in doing this work, because it really is, you know, it's exciting work to do, and it's a lot different than a lot of other areas in education even. So there's really some fantastic things about, you know, after school that we really tried to look for people that are coming in with that same standard and expectation of really, you know, providing our kiddos with all of the things that we want them to. You know, that's the exciting part about expanded learning is we really do have some fantastic opportunities to do a lot of things that that we wouldn't typically be able to do during the day. So, you know, again, we're really trying to recruit folks. The district just had a job fair, which was exciting, and that will hopefully, you know, turn out some more folks. But again, like we at this moment, like we do still have wait lists at most of the schools. That the middle schools, fortunately enough, are able to really take all of those, you know, all of the students that are interested, and they have a huge sports program that's super popular. So that's really you know, a real great point for students that are in middle school, because that is kind of an age where they really need things to do. So so that's an excellent part. But again, with our
Definitely.
elementary sites, we're kind of most sites maybe have I don't know, some are really high, like Malcolm X, because it's a really big school as it is. there's a high need there. So they have a relatively high wait list. But we do have some that like Sylvia Mendez has like 9 folks on the wait list amongst all of the grades. So, you know, the sites that are fully staffed, we're able to really, you know, get them in, and with our additional vendors and additional staff supports, we can kind of we've been trying to just add as many students as we can sort of manage.
Well, and that the vendors is something that's new, isn't it? Like I mean, at my kids' elementary school, they have, is it Evolo? The
Yeah, Alevo.
program, Alevo. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a new technique for managing people, managing more kids, right? Like that's really novel. Maybe you could say a little
Yeah.
bit more about that for everybody.
Sure. Yeah. So we've been contracting out with Alevo, who is a sports focused organization. We have been working with them for the last couple years, and so it has been, you know, the idea is to just have more hands so that we can then, you know, expand the capacity. I know that there are a couple of schools that are using them during the daytime for different recreational activities. In our case, we're, you know, again, using them for that rec time after school, but we're also using them like in the classroom, so they're helping out with homework and academic hour, and, you know, snack and enrichments. They're providing some really nice enrichment opportunities that, you know, some are sports and some are not. So it's really been helpful to have them on board. Let's see. I want to mention what Christy put in the chat too, just that the staffing, you know, about the staffing, that has adding the TK the TK ratios has really been tricky. So TK and Kinder went from 20 to 1 to 10 to 1. So that drastically impacted like the numbers that we could serve, because typically Kinders typically Kinders more than TKs, but there's an overwhelming amount of Kinders that are interested in care, and so with that ratio, it, you know, our staffing sort of formula that had been in place for years was based on that 20 to 1 ratio. So that also is sort of a factor in not quite adding up the way it normally would have.
That's huge. I mean, that's a
But
huge.
yeah, but the level coaches, again, just in that they have been helpful in just having some more bodies that can, you know, that are qualified to supervise our kiddos.
Maybe, you know, another sort of, so there's one other question. I'm going to give you 2 questions at the same time. You can choose which one, and that this sort of preps you, maybe, and Christy, if she wants to give feedback on this. Somebody wrote into our sort of message thing about what's the sort of current status in terms of change from having principals being overseeing the programming to not anymore. And then the other question I have is more around like future planning. And, you know, again, like I think a lot of elementary schools are feeling like PTA enrichment is unsustainable long term, at least in its current iteration. And so, you know, do you have sort of thoughts on that, or partnerships that might make, you know, that you could expand on a little bit? So either one of those, if you can give.
Okay. Yeah, sure. The first, I mean, I don't mind touching on both briefly. I think the current change with the principals no longer directly supervising our frontline staff, which is our instructional technicians, that has been it's a change. I mean, there are a lot of changes going on. So with any time there are a bunch of changes going on, it's, you know,
Yeah. Well,
it's
maybe, I mean, I guess as someone not as involved, like maybe you can tell us a bit more about what those changes have been looking like.
Yeah, no, definitely. What we were able to do is we added a new position to the after or the extended learning realm, and they are called program coordinators. And so we've had our program specialists that have always, run our day-to-day programs on site. However, they were not the supervisors of the instructional technicians. We call them ITs. And so that over time has sort of changed the landscape of what our programs used to be. So I have been around for a while. I actually I worked for the telephone company for quite a number of years, and then had my kid, and I came to work actually as a frontline, so as an IT. And so there are some differences in that, and you can see that it creates some challenge in not having those direct supervisors on, actually intertwined into the program. The principals, of course, they have a ton of stuff on their plates already, and most of the time they would not necessarily be there until 6 p.m. every evening. So those were sort of just the proximity challenges that um, created a little less, I don't want to say less oversight, but it changed the way things were able to kind of sustain themselves, maybe, and so now with this coordinator position, again, we have the direct supervisors are all on site, so they're able to kind of really maintain and establish. I think that's where we're more at, is establishing or reestablishing, our standards and our expectations for, these things like enrichment and supervision and just all of the after school things, academic support, and really trying to encourage folks that may not have uh, known or may not have taken the initiative to like go into classrooms. And so there's a lot of things that we encourage in the coordinator position, being, at the sites mostly. They're able to really guide that, and really kind of help us reestablish some of those things that have maybe, been a challenge for some. So it is allowing us to kind of train our folks and really get them up to where we want, everyone to be in order to provide all of these things.
It sounds like a big improvement. I mean, again, I can totally see how, if the person in charge is the principal and they leave at 4 o'clock or something, then that leaves everybody kind of at a loss if questions or problems arise. That definitely sounds like
Yeah, it's been really, really nice. And our program specialists are great. They've been really doing this and without being the supervisors for so long. So it really is it's just a real help when it comes to being able to, set those expectations. And I guess like moving into that with the future planning, one thing for us, just with our current permanent staff, we are really working on enrichments and really trying to get our ITs to really understand and really be comfortable in leading these types of, engaging classes that our kids want to participate in. We're also really kind of pushing for sites to really take surveys, from the students and really find out what they want, because I think that is another challenge when it comes to like enrichment classes. And this is just from, again, me sort of moving up in the ranks and seeing how how parents, operate and how they advocate for their students. That is always, just wonderful to see, but it also is something where, I had a parent say, "Hey, I want piano for my kid." And I'm like, "Well, that sounds like an amazing enrichment. However, like I have 200 kids in this program and I don't know how we would do that." And so I think that, getting the student's voice is just so important, because then when we are choosing these vendors and going through this whole like laborious process that again is sort of, turns folks off to some degree, um it allows us to kind of go into it a little more confidently, like, hey, we're going to choose this class because these students are really into this. They want coding, or they want robotics, or they want judo, something. So it's interesting because Berkeley, we have so many different interests, and all of the schools are different, and so we've really been trying to streamline that, and really figure out ways, that we can sort of make it work, and also acknowledging that, we do have a lot of folks that are on the wait list, and even those that there are probably people that aren't on the wait list that would also um, find interest, in our programs and
Right.
our enrichment. So we're really trying to, first, it's like we have to build the capacity, and then we also have to sort of um, make sure that the vendors that we're using are like available for our,
Right, but that does
little.
speak to like a potential partnership here, because it seems like a lot of the schools are trying to set up those contracts through PTA sponsored enrichment, you know, trying to sort of to mesh these together, expand access, and at the same time, sort of like handing off the contracts from PTA to you as a means of like expanding the program so it's one unified thing rather than something that's sort of and the part one of the conversations we've had at PTA council level is how variable it is by school. Like some schools are not doing PTA after school enrichment classes at all and have zero access to that. Other schools have it 4 and 5 days a week. And so like it's having that be something that we can navigate together and not be two separate programs, but rather expanding access, which then allows more programming and more slots available.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we've
no,
got things in the
absolutely.
chat too, and I've not been very good at keeping track of this. So but I'll sorry. Didn't mean
No,
to
no,
keep going.
no, great. I mean, I think, yeah, this is like what we're open for, is really trying to figure that out. And I guess I would just add to tag on to what you were saying is, again, I've been around a little while, so I was a program specialist, so I worked with my PTA, and we had great, enrichment classes. I think that um pre-pandemic, I think that there has been a little bit of a kind of like a memory lapse of sorts, from being in the pandemic. Um, and so previously, all of the contracts did come through extended learning. We all sort of worked with the PTAs and did all of that. That was, like Scott spoke to, it did become cumbersome for us, because we were talking about students that weren't necessarily even in our programs, and so that was the
And
difficult.
having to like shepherd them between, yeah.
And to have someone be responsible for them, right? Because it's like, it's great if you say, hey, you want to go to a class so they can play on the yard, and it's great until something happens to them on the yard, and then it's
Right.
like, wait, we need an adult here that's paying attention. Um, so that, and I guess coming out of the pandemic, there were a lot of PTAs that were, very, very anxious. Again, a lot of people that maybe brand new to the district, like that was a huge gap of time
Yeah.
where like people don't have that history anymore, and so they were really, a lot were anxious to make it happen. And so I think that's where some of the current model, came out of, really just trying to plug the need.
And
So
Nishra, you're talking about I know how much knowledge you have about this. So maybe you can come in and talk a little, because you've got mentioned a few things here. And Christy, you said, would there be possibility to pool funds and do more cross-program offerings across schools? Honestly, that would be fantastic. I think part of what makes setting all this up unmanageable is that, you know, every school is trying to do it themselves and feeling like they're alone trying to make these things happen. And it's so much coordination that and it has to be redone every year. And so it feels like there's a sense of, you know, if we can work together so that these kind of contracts are maintained, so that the contract is really with learns and bears, and that creates a, sort of like the, I'm going to say it wrong again, a levo, sort of like how a levo does, but like maybe there's loads of things that are sort of like that, where that allows access for as many kids who want to do learns, thereby, you know, having more spots, more funding, and then paying for some of these contracts. But yeah, so since Anusha didn't come in, let me go ahead and read some of the things that she's put in here.
Did you want me to
also,
talk?
you, Anusha, you wrote about the sort of struggles with the main issues with trying to keep
Right. I mean, even we could pull contracts and do like all that's like step one, but I think like first, like you'd have to have a list of all the schools that are doing PTA enrichments or planning to like next year. And then a list of like all the vendors like each school is like using, so we can see where there's already overlap or share information about them to determine, you know, work with the district to be like which ones are the ones that maybe they could go forward with under the model. But in the pooling resources or share, you know, like what Chris, I was saying, the main issue we're going to run into is just that it's difficult for PTA to manage the administrative element of the enrichment programs. So like registration, collecting funds, like et cetera, like that is not like an issue. I think most schools can do that. And that's like an easy ask for a PTA volunteer. But you also have to essentially act as like the after school principal because nobody else wants to touch the program right now. So that's when you run into like those questions like I put in the chat, like who is responsible, you know, if a teacher like has a car accident and doesn't show up that day? What about if, you know, like a student is not picked up by like the parents or like for whatever reason? Or there's like a discipline issue and like the enrichment teacher's like, hi, I'm really struggling with like getting this and this kid, right? Or there's a conflict between two students, or there's a conflict between a parent and like the vendor. Like normally these are all the things that like the principal would solve like on a school day. And you could get PTA people who are capable of solving that, but I just feel like you shouldn't because, you know, like they get to
that it doesn't feel like the role.
Yeah, and also like it's kind of like it's a like I don't know, like maybe it's just because I'm like an employment lawyer, but it just creates like this weird area where like you're having insight into like all sorts of like health issues, personal issues, like all this stuff about like students and their families, like that maybe you don't really want like like a random parent who's raised their hand and volunteered for PTA like to have.
Merlin, you've got your hand up. Do you want to jump in too?
Yeah, so we do have an enrichment program at Emerson, and we have run into all of those things this year. And so we're putting together an ad hoc committee to really take a look at whether the enrichment program is even viable. Our principal has kind of put her foot down and stated that she's not going to manage it in any way, shape, or form next year. She has stayed past the time that she's supposed to get off several times because there was a discipline issue or you know, one thing after another. So there are several very interested groups of parents at Emerson, those that are in Kids World, those that are on the waiting list at Kids World, and those that didn't get into Kids World, who are all interested in this one issue. So the more information we can pass along to, especially those parents that are in enrichment for care purposes and not necessarily for enrichment purposes, I'd really like to get some information for them.
Well, so Brazil, what do you like? Do you, because in my head, it seems like it would make more sense, like I said, for so, I mean, certainly not all of them, right? But to have some contracts with some of the people that the PTA enrichment programs are using, and just sort of pull in any, so if, so similar to how middle school works, if someone wants to do anything after school at middle school, you sign up for at least 3 days of learns, and you get to stay for whatever enrichment. And then it expands also to whoever, I mean, again, whether it's care or enrichment, it kind of puts everyone in the same boat of like, we've got fun activities here, and it provides care up until 6 p.m.
Yeah,
Do you
I
see that
mean,
as part of the future, so that we can, I mean, because again, there's a part of me that's like, can we just stop? Like, is there a way that we could support? I mean, maybe it would be in working with you to support the contract process, or outreach, or reviews from the enrichment programs to say like, these were the good ones, these ones maybe not so much.
yeah, definitely. I was gonna drop in the chat. There's a vendor interest form that we've been kind of giving out as we sort of get solicitations or offers and whatever. So we kind of send it out. We also are really open to like working with our community members. So it's like, if there's a grandma that feels like she can handle a group of 20 kids and teach them how to knit, like that would be fantastic. There's so many kids that want to do that. So I think I'm sharing this with you. Of course, feel free to share it with your PTAs as well, because I think what we're doing as the expanded learning team is really trying to funnel all of these potential resources and connections into a place where we can really see. And again, saying that some schools love this, some other schools hate that, and so it gives us a place where we can kind of have that menu style of um, kind of cache of people that we've worked with or that would like to work with us. So definitely that. I think that, like I first mentioned, I really think that that is very similar to how the PTAs were set up before, as far as really trying to have those classes. I think the challenge, one, like learns, we're an ACES program, ACES grant that requires us to hold those ratios, as Christy mentioned. So we cannot get around that. And people are like, oh, it's just one more kid. It's like, no, it is not one more kid. It is like a whole situation after that.
Totally.
And so those are some of the things that kind of tend to bind us when it comes to just having a space for every kid. And I think that's the difference. Of course, PTA's mission is to serve, all of the students. And so that is, I think, where it probably came about in the first place, is like to serve all those kids that may not have been able to either get into learns, or they, because again, like our priorities are, our homeless, foster youth, folks that qualify for free and reduced lunch, all of those people, those groups are prioritized in getting into learn, so they would be in first. And so I think that because of the way that Berkeley is sort of shifting, it's a challenge. It's sort of like a balancing game, because there's way more people that are willing to pay, all of the money. And then but we also still need to make sure that we're providing this access and service and equity, even in just opportunities to these other groups. So it's a little bit tricky. I do think, though, that the one of the things that we talked about in our PTA collaborative as well is like really kind of thinking about maybe a push for hiring people, like for staff. I think, because it would be fantastic. Like, I think it's also kind of interesting that, you know, sometimes people, of course, if you don't get in, you may feel like we just didn't let you in, where we really are just so bummed and hurt that we have people on a wait list. It's like killing us. So, you know, I think
Well, I
that
mean,
that will be the
again,
goal.
I wonder too, let's see, we've got a few more comments here. Cragmont with no late bus and the geography, we have trouble with the demographics of learns. And then Anisha, in terms of what to take back to our schools, there won't be any change immediately happening at the district level, but the PTAs could suspend enrichment programming and redirect those volunteer resources to working with the extended learning group on figuring out what the collaborative program would look like. So that's, I mean, that's again, like, is that a direction, you know, to take? Would we, I mean, I know that the PTA enrichment classes, I will say I'm at a school that ends at 3:20, and for a lot of families that 1 hour to get from 3 instead of leaving at 3:20 to leave at 4:30 is huge. And so I know that those enrichment classes offer a drastic impact to the families who use them. Like it's not, it is enrichment, but it all is also care. And so, you know, I know that's a deal that serves a purpose, especially I think a lot of after school programming outside of Bears and Learns also was taken away because of the pandemic. Like I know there are programs that just didn't come back. And so, you know, I know that it would be hard to suspend the enrichment programming and say we're not doing that unless there was sort of like a, we're not doing it this year, but by next year we will have, like, almost with sort of this, yes, it feels worse this year, this is a pain, like, you know, 24 25 will be painful, but by 25 26 we can have availability to, I don't know, however many more students, or some sort of like promise of access by making that kind of investment. Do you think, like, does that seem?
I mean, I think it sounds great. I think that, I mean, it definitely doesn't seem far from necessarily where we're trying to go. I think that, you know, the part that is really the tough part of the pill to swallow is the fact that we definitely have, like, one, we need staff people to do this, right?
But like using something like Destiny Arts, like contracts with someone like them that could conceivably come out to multiple schools, you know, several days a week as a means of connecting the dots here. So okay, we can't have our staff, but like Alevo, we have Destiny Arts come in. We have, I mean, I know there's other programming.
Oh,
Kala, I think, does
absolutely.
some programming in schools too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that that's something that we can definitely, you know, look into. I think that the challenge becomes, again, like, we have our learns and our bears program mandate, so we have to do that regardless, right? And so the fact that now somebody wants to come in for an hour because that's what's helpful for them, it doesn't necessarily align, right? So we have to figure out how to get them to the coverage to sort of align, um at least from my perspective. You know, I think because it's now basically saddling the after school programs with, you know, all of that stuff.
Well, I don't know that it would
So,
be reasonable to do all of it, but like, again, adding in a few of these, especially the bigger contracts that
yeah.
can manage like multiple classrooms of students after school.
Yeah, I mean, I it's something to explore. So absolutely, I don't think that there's anything that's necessarily off the table. What we want to do is get these, you know, we want to get our kiddos exposed to things, and I think, like, that's one of my big things when it comes to these enrichments, is like, some people have been doing enrichments here for a long, long, long time. And not to say that there's anything wrong with what they're providing, but sometimes we may need to, like, mix it up, and, you know, and I think there's a lot of comfortability that has sort of grown in some of the vendors, as well as, you know, some of the families, and I think that our kids move on, but these classes don't. And so, you know, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. We have a bunch of kids that have experienced something that no one else has. So we may need to think differently about what they want and what they need, you know. So Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything is off the table, and I welcome, Christy and I definitely welcome the partnership. So come on to our PTA collaborative.
And so that, I mean, again, it's 8:15. I don't want to keep you guys any longer. I know that this is an incredibly long day for you, and I very much appreciate you making the time to come and talk with us. And so would that be the next step, is basically an ask of, is there anything that could be done to, again, sort of make any of that partnership happen even for like a year from now? So we'd be looking at January. Like, how can we, is it just, connecting people straight to you guys through the working group, or how do you see that?
So connecting people as far as vendors, or are you saying?
How PTAs can support you so that we can basically pass the torch of the vendors that we've been contracting with to be
Yeah.
potential, again, filling out the form that you gave us, which will go out with our notes.
Yeah, that would be really, really helpful. And then to just, I think that one beautiful thing about PTAs is, they have this like grassroots network of folks that, we're all here on this meeting, but there are like a bajillion other people that are not on these meetings. So, I think that it's really, one, helpful to reach out to your communities to see what's out there, to really, because I think it's a fantastic opportunity for some families that, have a talent and maybe they are looking for work, or maybe they want, to pay for something else. It's like, who knows? People need money, right? And so I think that it's a great opportunity for those grassroots type conversations to really take place and really start looking outside of the box. And I think, as far as us, I mean, it would be definitely lovely, as Christy said, to really kind of think about maybe the funding, like what kind of funding we're looking at, because I think that certainly changes things. It makes things happen that may not be necessarily able to happen. I don't know if this means like this would be a per school thing, or if everyone would come together. I know that there's all those PTA rules and stuff too, so I don't know how that goes. But I think, yeah, like if we start exploring that, I think that would be great. So it's like to recruit people that are in our communities that want to do these, want to serve as a vendor, to recruit people that want to serve in our programs, because our programs are really, we have different kinds of peoples and lifestyles and things going on now that could potentially support working in our programs, so that would be fantastic.
Another thought too, when you think about opening up the scope of things, and funding streams, one thing that I don't think anyone's utilized in quite a long time, I'm actually going to put it in the chat. There's a chancellor's grant through UC Berkeley. And that might, if our PTAs could recruit from our parents, somebody who wants to put together a grant as a means of helping all kids across the district, like that might be a connect the dots kind of thing that would provide, again, they're saying like, how do we partner with our community? Well, we're saying, hey, we could really use some after school programming, maybe in an area that UC excels at, like a STEM program, and partner up to, sort of solve both things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a great thing. I know that we have a lot of partnerships with, or not a lot, but quite a few partnerships with different Cal organizations, and they are fantastic. I think that also, yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, because I think like during the school day, there is a lot of support. After school and extended learning, it's a lot of work. It's Christy and I, right? So it's like we get all the gripes. We don't have any other departments to deflect to or anything like that. It's basically us really trying to to really serve our kids and get everyone, make everybody happy. Of course, that very rarely happens, but I do feel really good about where we're heading. So, I think we're not opposed to any of the support. I think the challenge that we face is just our own parameters with our programs and that not being negotiable. And so sometimes folks that are not in those groups that benefit don't understand those parameters at all the time. So that's kind of the learning curve of just knowing that like we're working within our lines that we have to, but we're certainly open and able to go outside of the box when we think. We just have to fit it into certain things, at certain times. So yeah, I mean, I think it's all great. So I would just say, yeah, come to the collaborative. We're totally down for it. I do think that it's definitely interesting to see, how that might work because the bigger schools, I think the equity and the access to me is a huge point to really consider and how those things are established.
Is the collaborative meeting still at noon on Thursdays?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
I was gonna pull up. I had
Thank you so much for joining us, Brazil. I'm not sure I caught everyone in the chat. Does anyone else want to jump in with thoughts or questions here?
Just so you know, our next collaborative meeting is April 11th, and we're gonna be kind of talking about summer and other things, I'm sure.
So Brazil, if someone wanted to join that collaborative, did they email you or what should they do?
I would check in with Tasung or Scott. Anusha is there. There's quite a few of you all on here, so I
Yeah,
don't really know how you recruit.
I've been I've been acting as the point person for that. So I actually have a Google group and we'll add parents to that Google group.
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott.
So I don't want to cut anyone off, but it sounds like no one's ready. So I just wanted to thank you all for having us, and look
Thank you,
forward.
Brazil.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. All right. I don't know. Do you want me to hang around for anything or?
Oh, you've been on the clock since 7 this morning, right?
Yeah,
Like,
pretty much.
thank you so much for staying this late. We really appreciate it.
All right, no worries. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. We still have business to cover we have other things on the agenda.
Well,
So I hope everyone
and
can.
is there, I mean, before we step away from this as a topic, like, is there anything we can think of to sort of rally more support or interest in the direction? Because again, like, it seems like whenever we talk about PTA enrichment classes, people are saying like, it is unsustainable for us to do this. And if they're going to be using contracts to help with access, like, is there a way to solve all of that? Lindsay, you've got your hand up.
So, I mean, I think that the capacity issues are the ones that really need the emergency solve, because as long as we're depending on outside vendors for capacity, like none of this is going to work. Like, we can't make a middle school model with the ratios that we have in elementary school. And the middle school model is really like the best thing for PTA enrichment class, like offerings. So that's kind of where
done. But that
their
is all
ratios are
done
100% different. Their ratios
Yes,
are like
totally true.
insanely different. And so what I'm saying is that like it's really a retention strategy to not lose so many people through by keeping them employed over the summer, or paying them more, or having jobs for them like that are the hours that work for living on, right? So there are like a bunch of barriers to retention. And that is like the crux of the issue from my perspective, because these other things can be built upon and improved upon if we have stable workforce and enough workforce. And it's heartbreaking to watch new kids come into our schools and struggle through the childcare with the combination of transportation and learns and bears. That's the worst thing to see. So that's kind of where I would put our energy is in encouraging revision of those structures and systems and policies.
We've got 3
Scott,
raised
do you want to
hands.
go ahead next?
Yeah, so I just wanted to, I mean, I think that we have to continue to show up, Rita, and we have to continue to press this. Like, it's definitely, I think that probably that we should be tackling this first to try and clear the wait lists, and that we've got to make clear to district leadership that clearing the wait lists is our, one of our top issues. And then once we clear the wait lists, then we want to add more enrichment into the program. I mean, we did a big survey. I mean, actually, they did. Christy Brazil did a big survey not that long ago. Came up with some very good data that they handed over to us, and the more enrichment in the program was the number one issue. So I think it's capacity, and then more enrichment, and we just have to continue to press. It's a long struggle, but we've got to keep at it. Anusha?
Thanks. So I think Brazil and Christy are actually, from my experience, and I've only been on this year, so Scott could speak about what it was like with previous ones, but they're very open and willing to collaborate. And so I think there's 2 issues, one of which I think they're actually making a really big progress towards, and they're kind of similar, intertwined, but also separate. And so the first is just the waiting lists for bears and learns, and so like staffing, what happens in that program, like getting kids enrolled in it. That's like one issue. And then the other one, which is overlaps with that, but is also distinct, and some parents have separate preferences for that, is just the PTA enrichment classes. And so here it's like enrichment's provided by an outside vendor. That's how to classify it at school campus. So you could try this class. Right. So which would be different than like a trained staff and like bears and learns, like also teaching you XYZ thing. And so depending on what the parent communities of different schools are interested in, there is probably nothing's going to happen like for the rest of this year. But if that is something our schools really want, then like people need to come and say, this is what we want. And then they're actually pretty open. And if it seems like that's what the community wants, the district is also being unusually responsive, I would say, for an administrative body. And so they will like figure out like they have things that they have to accomplish, but within that, like, so it's like a great opportunity if you're recruiting people, like to really shape like a future program, because we have willing listeners who are eager to collaborate with parents.
Vicki?
So it's just, how do we make that happen? Go ahead, Vicki.
Yeah, a couple of things. I apologize, I was late. I had like 3 meetings scheduled tonight. Did Brazil talk about, because one of the things Lindsay said was paying staff better, what we actually pay the Learns and Bears staff? Did that come up? Does anyone know what we pay them?
I saw one of the things they sent out before, and I think it's like not terrible. It's $25 an hour plus like union membership and benefits. So it's not like $10 or like even minimum wage.
Right. Well, that's why I was curious, because at one point, and I don't know if this has changed, we were talking about shortage in IAs, and they were making something like $18.75 an hour, which is minimum wage. And I don't know if that's correct for this year. And so I wondered if the staff is making that, because I was just looking at a BSEP proposal for tutors, and we just increased the cost, like for at Rise, to pay tutors from $20 to $25 an hour. So if we're paying college kids $25 an hour to do an hour of tutoring in the afternoons after school, like what are we paying these teachers? And so I just wanted to make sure we were at least paying them that. And then the next thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, give me a second and I'll come back to me.
I think you're the only one, unless someone else wants to. jump
Okay,
in.
well, I was just looking at the Malcolm X stats, and I just have to count something real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So 20.
Can I respond to the pay thing while Vicky's counting?
Yeah,
So I agree that on the surface, 25 bucks or so an hour sounds okay, but it's the combination of how many hours they get, which makes it not livable.
Yeah, no,
So-
that totally. Okay, and then when we were talking about, and again, I wasn't here, so I apologize for not knowing what was discussed, but at the Malcolm X PTA program, we have 235 students enrolled in PTA enrichment classes, and 75 of them are in Learns. So that is about what, a third of them? 150, yeah, about a third of them are in Learns. And so that goes back to the capacity thing. Yes, we have all of these wait lists for Learns, but in addition to that, if we were to integrate these enrichment classes, that's an extra at our school, 150 students that aren't in Learns that maybe would be, but then also there's no part-time Learns, like, because there's such a wait list that they can't take kids, at least at our district, like at a part-time level. We have almost all full-time students because of our wait lists.
I thought they could do 3 days. No,
I think they're allowed to in theory, but at our site,
But they
we give
don't.
priority to people who need full-time, and anyone who wants part-time is, and we do have kids who take three Monday, Wednesday, Friday enrichment classes, but we have lots of kids who just do Monday, just do Wednesday, especially Wednesday, because it's early release, so they want that extra hour. And so I don't know how Learns would necessarily have the capacity to manage that, on top of what they're learning. And then I also wondered if there was a model where you could have someone that you're paying more that could be like a lead teacher for kindergarten, and then have less experienced people, like college students even, that were like sub teachers for groups of like 15 or 20 kids, and like have 3 kindergarten groups, so you have that one like credentialed person or that was getting paid more in charge of the grade level group. But to increase capacity, I wonder if there's a way to do it that way, where you can then have like those sub teachers for smaller groups, and then you could get more kids in that way. If you have a lot of more of those sort of like gig workers, where it's a college student or something like that, who do just need a couple of hours, but they're all under supervision of lead teachers who are more like, full-time employees. So I don't know. That's an idea.
yeah. Yeah, I wonder too about need, like currently, I mean, again, I will say too, there are some schools that end an hour later than others, right? And so some people are like trying to fill more time than others with after school. But I'm wondering, like at BAM, where, people get out at 3:20 and then you can do an hour of enrichment. I wonder if those kids were going to Learns, would they just stay an hour also? And so it's like, is there a large chunk of people who are only needing an extra, hour to hour and a half of care for their kids? Do we need all staff on site until 6 or 6:15, or is it a proportion? And again, these are just thoughts. I mean, again, I don't really know, but we should sort of wrap on this, because I know we have other items on our agenda too. I appreciate everyone coming tonight and talking about this. Like, to me, this is one of our big sort of, again, like areas where PTA could really be impactful, and make some shifts. To me, part of the big issue here really is that some schools don't offer enrichment at all. Other schools are doing 4 and 5 days a week. Some schools apparently have a wait list of just 7 or 8 kids, and other schools, you know, it's radically more than that. And so it just does feel, you know, like a real problem across our district.
Rita, just a quick before we wrap up. Do you guys, you regularly get out at 3:20? And so
Yeah.
on your early release day, do you get out at 2:20 or 2:30? Okay, because we get out at 1:30 on early release day. So that's
Yep.
like a 4.5 hour day, and then 2:20. So it's a lot more time we're covering. And so with our
Yep.
PTA classes, that goes to the, you know, that extra hour, and then it's the time that other kids at other schools are in learns, you know. So that's a lot of extra work for at least the staff at our learns. It's a whole extra hour of care. So that's
Totally.
interesting. I hadn't
At
thought
the
about
same
that.
time, my guess is that, I mean, granted, let me look it up, because I was able to reach out to Unique Wells at BAM to ask about how many kids are enrolled. So at BAM, there's around 55 that go to before care if you combine Bears and Learns, and around maybe 140 who do after school. But my guess is that we have more kids doing before care, because if you don't start school until 9 o'clock, there's more families that need that before care. Whereas if you start at 8, like that's gives parents enough time to get to work.
Well, and that also makes it unfair for different schools on being able to get staff because, for example, at our site, it's 25 hours a week, you know, which is above, you know, more than half time right there. You know, which is significant compared to 3:30, 4:30. That's an hour and a half each day. It's not very much time. Yeah.
Nimota, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I was wondering how much staff Unique has, because I mean, I'm no longer in elementary, but I know before the pandemic, Cragmont's Learns had like 7 or 8 people helping to run it.
That's a
And
great
then,
question.
and then I know last year at one point they only had 3 people running their whole program. So, you know what I mean? And then they did a levo or whatever it's called to supplement. But I think this is just,
I don't have that, but she does say that they're short-staffed by 3 people. And so they're utilizing Alevo coaches to support those classes that they're short.
I think that they really need to figure out a way to hire more people. But at the same time, I know at some schools, I know just because I know people in that work throughout the district, and some of them have gotten those pink slips that their hours are going to be reduced next year. So there's like a real just that's, you know, it's not quite all jiving somehow.
Well, and yeah, I mean, it might be an area where like, yeah, totally. This has been a really great conversation, everyone. Thank you so much.
Scott, are you still trying to recruit for the committee? I know for a while you had said that, you know, you wanted more elementary school on the.
Yes, we still, there's still some sites where we don't have kind of, I know we lost Merlin, but we need a permanent representative from Emerson. And I don't think we had someone from Washington. So I can send out another, I could send out another email, just, or maybe you can incorporate in the notes.
Yeah, I want to
that
put in
they're
the
still,
minutes that,
yeah.
yeah, these are the open schools
I'll
to contact
I'll-
you.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. I think Rita had to turn off her camera, but we can keep going. We had a couple more items on the agenda. One was there was an ask of, hi Rita, I was gonna keep going on the agenda. That's okay. I was gonna jump to the other items. I I have there Berkeley High PTA California Fish Grill Spring Fundraiser. Someone had pinged us about that, Rita.
I wasn't quite sure what I'm not remembering what the ask was though.
I think it was
it just
it
more
was one of those
involvement?
passive fundraisers to ask if
Oh,
we
right.
wanted to support such a fundraiser for whether it's district wide or for Berkeley High. But I guess I just put it on the agenda because it was an ask, and we don't usually do these passive fundraisers as a district PTA. But what people thought of that are like, not worth it. You're shaking your head, Vicky. What thoughts?
We in general don't do any of the passive fundraisers at our site either. We get things all the time from like restaurants that is like, go to this restaurant and you get 20% of the proceeds. And it's a lot of effort typically to market for them. And we might get like $800, which is not nothing. But when we can't find volunteers to do events or anything else and to get someone to manage that, it's, it's a lot. And I don't know that we necessarily as a district committee want to do fundraising.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it was more a resource to share if people did. I know my understanding is that a bunch of schools use Pegasus books and do fundraisers for that through them. And so this might just be another
Okay.
potential.
Yeah, and like some do. Mrs. Dalloway's also is another one. I think maybe you could just send it to the list and we can put it on our e-trees. It really could maybe just be to advertise or something for it too.
Yeah. Okay, so that'll be good too. We get these solicitations. We'll just throw it out to everybody and we'll look for schools to figure out what they want to do or not. Okay. There was another item about advocacy for a plant-based school fund. Did you dive into there, Rita, or?
I mean, I've read through things and I wasn't entirely clear what the ask was. Like, is she wanting more participation and support for her program?
I think so. This was an email sent out to us to ask if the BPTA would like to collaborate with them because they're trying to advocate for plant-based, more plant-based food for the school. And so I assumed as if they were asking if there's enough parents who would like to advocate for this for the school district, if we wanted to join in. And one of their ask is part of their group is trying to raise $7,000. So I guess I'm asking the membership if there is any interest in advocating or collaborating with this plant-based school group.
I would recommend also sending that out to all of the sites and have each site talk about that. I just got a request to put on our agenda for Wednesday after spring break, something about lunch and changing the lunch food. And my initial response was, sure, we'll put it on the agenda, but that's a history and a long topic. And I wasn't sure what it was, but maybe it's this plant-based thing. We've also talked about like extending the lunch period as well in the past. So I really didn't know what it was that this parent wanted, but maybe it's this. And so I think if we just send it to individual school sites, they can bring it to their boards and
we'll follow up. Well, how would we follow up as a body, or is it just not?
You could just follow up by saying you shared it with individual PTAs and that they will contact you directly if they're interested in participating.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't, to me, like that doesn't seem like something at this level that we want to try and navigate. But if schools want to take that up, I mean, a lot of schools have green teams and things like that. Maybe that could be a partnership.
Okay.
I found out recently that our school, while we have both compost, recycling, and trash bins, they all go to the same place. I feel like becoming more plant-based might be a few steps above where we are.
Okay. Any hot issues people want to talk about to bring up?
I've got two issues. One is on the agenda for next.
Go for it,
The
Lindsay.
AB. So So AB 2222 is an upcoming assembly bill that advocates for better reading instruction for kids, and it starts at the teacher training pipeline. And so it's more comprehensive than the dyslexia screening bill that kind of succeeded last year. So the California State PTA has come out in support of this bill, and advocacy regulations from the California State PTA says that if the state PTA decides to advocate for something to positively impact children, then all underlying PTAs are also allowed and encouraged to advocate for the same legislation. And so right now, there's an opportunity to write a letter in support and have it uploaded to the legislative portal, and to add our logo to a logo wall of supporting organizations. And every little bit helps. So if the Berkeley PTA Council would like to write a letter and also encourage local units to do so as well, it's really appreciated. And if anybody wants to carpool with me to Sacramento on April 10th or 16th, I'm heading up. Any thoughts or feelings about supporting?
Yeah, I have a
stuff?
question. So you're saying that the California State PTA has already endorsed this? So then my ask and or question would be, can you write something up and send it to everybody so that we could bring it to our boards to vote upon putting it on our e-tree to then say that we support it and let people know about it?
Yes, I have drafted something and shared it with Rita and Di, so it's easy for me to send that out to the entire group. And also there's choices, like if you wanted to have it come from an executive board, you know, that's fine. If your general meeting dates don't line up, you know, in time to push it through the legislative portal. And I'm also happy to, you know, do that uploading work for you, or I don't, but I know people who will do it for you and then send you a receipt.
Is there, so for our level, is there like what needs to get put into motion for us to endorse this or support?
It's up to you whether you want to take a vote at a meeting like this on supporting the measure, and then it would come from the entire Berkeley PTA Council, or if you'd like to vote as an executive board and then write it from the executive board of the Berkeley PTA Council. Whatever's easier for the unit.
Well, there's not that many of us here tonight. Do we need to have a certain number to, or is it just that a percentage of those of us here?
What's quorum, I guess, is the question, right? To vote?
I think it's about, I think it's seven sites represented.
7 sites, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we have more than 7 sites represented here.
So we could hold a vote right now if we wanted to, since it's on the agenda.
That's fine. So
Discussion, what do folks feel about this?
I move to endorse this reading AB 2020. I think that's what you said it was.
2222.
2222.
Namota is seconding.
Right.
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
9.
There's another message.
Angelica said yes.
James,
So-
Angelica, Jennifer,
And Angelica said yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay. Any nays? Okay.
So the motion passes. Thank you so much, everyone, for supporting this. The thing that wasn't on the agenda that I have to share is that Sylvia Mendez, PTA, who couldn't make it tonight, has been working for a couple of years trying to organize a dyslexia simulation kind of fun event for caregivers and even staff could benefit. And tentatively it's scheduled on April 30th. That's a Tuesday from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. in either their cafeteria or auditorium. And they would like this to be a district-wide event. They'd like participation and partnership from as many PTA units as possible, because we want to get as many people for the effort that it takes to put on this dyslexia simulation. We'd like really good attendance, and so we'd like to, hold out a hand and ask for support in organizing, publicizing, and maybe if the RSVPs are a lot, some money to chip in on the pizza or the childcare. If we split it across all the PTAs, it shouldn't be that much. And I'm working on having the North Region SELPA CAC support the event as well. So it will be a nice big push to have people experience it. The benefits of a dyslexia simulation are that it really fosters empathy with struggling readers. And what it does is it also kind of puts us all in a mindset of like just walking in other people's shoes as we move through a new ELA adoption. Like, we should really be thinking about the most vulnerable learners, and dyslexia is the most common reason that kids have IEPs in Berkeley Unified and everywhere. So
I've been trying to put together a email list for the contact for the person of the newsletter for each school. So I can give that to you too. That might be, again, like if what we're trying to do is get messaging out, that would get it into a lot of newsletters.
that would be perfect. Thank you.
Have you shared this with Matt Espinoza?
This just came together this morning. The date
Okay.
was just
Yeah, because
tentatively
I'm
chosen.
happy to help publicize it, and I think I have a CSIS meeting coming up before that date that I could potentially share there. But I would also reach out to Matt, because he could maybe help get it in a district publication, because I know in recent district publications there's been some large scale presentations at individual school sites. So he might be able to help you do that, but I'm happy to also put it on RE Tree.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of if the CAC co-hosts it, it's an official district committee. And so therefore we can just go directly to Trish. Sometimes she'll just put it on the blog and the calendar for us as an official thing. And so yes, definitely, and right, because all the help we can get is really good, especially with translation. Yeah, and so we're asking for Ophi to help us translate also.
Hey, I'm checking on time. We have about 7 minutes. I do want to jump to the treasures down there. Someone had commented about just how people are doing. It's been a struggle about fundraising.
Real quick, before you do, Angelica had written in the chat, we ended our last call briefly discussing how there's a couple, she made 2 comments, how PTA budgets are allocated to subsidizing teacher and staff salaries at our sites. It's a ton of pressure to fundraise year to year. And she also, and that's following up on the strategy for getting out of funding staff full-time FTEs. Can we have a discussion about how we might do that? So again, like, yeah, Vicky. Sorry.
So I have 2 comments about that. One in regards to coming from SBAC, which is the Supervisor Budget Advisory Committee. We're going to have $7.1 million in ongoing cuts that we need to make this school year, and then additional $2.4 million next year. And some of those cuts would, one that we didn't recommend, but that could potentially come back around, is some staff cutting of like noon supervisors and clerical staff, equivalent to like 3 FTE, which would reduce, like, for example, a 0.8 to a 0.6 at a site. Typically, those types of things are then asked of for the PTA to help fund to make that person's position back whole when the district cuts that funding. So, well, yes, totally, we want to stop paying for this stuff. I feel like in the overall scope of what we're looking at with the budget, we might get even more asks. And then the second thing on that I want to say is that we did get our arts funding in, and our PTA, at least our principal, is reimbursing our PTA something like $50,000 or $60,000 from our previous contributions to the SSC. When they get the arts funding money in to pay us back for the money that we've contributed towards arts funding. But we were asked that we give our checks by May 1st, I think, this year for next year's SSC, because of all of those pink slips that have gone out, and in order to make those positions whole. So we in the past have given our $150,000 check in like July for next year, but we just got the request and were asked to give it by May 1st. And with the promise that we'll get a reimbursement of $60,000 from money that we've already given them for last year. So that helps with our fundraising. But I don't know that all schools are going to potentially get money back from their to their PTAs. So I just wanted to let you know what's going on at our site.
Another thing that's interesting about the Prop 28 money, which, I finally actually sat down and read the actual thing. It's supposed to be it's hiring new people. So anything existing before Prop 28 goes into effect, I'm not sure that we can just say, here, we want this paid for now. So even if it was PTA that was paying for it before, it has to be new programming additionally.
So yes, and so 2 perspectives on that. I haven't talked to our principal on how at Malcolm X we're going to do that, but I'm also on the school site council for Berkeley High, and we're doing our BSEP money right now, and there were several programs like dance and other things and drama, and they said, oh, we're going to use drama for Prop 28 because it's a new program. It's extending like a production class and adding drama too. But because the SSC and BSEP money has been supporting like the African Diaspora and a couple other and like some media tech classes, they're saying they can't use Prop 28 money for that. So I'm not quite sure how Malcolm X is going to do it, but at least at the high school, they've already come back and said all these things that, BSEP has been funding, we can't switch it to Prop 28. So you are correct. I'm not sure what kind of loophole Malcolm X has. So I didn't get those details yet.
Jamie, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Angelica and I talked to our principal about this last week, and he basically said that because the PTA had previously funded these, and going forward, Prop 28 is going to be funding them, that's the loophole. That's sufficient for it to be considered new programming.
But maybe BSEP won't count for that, but PTA does. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I think that was a general question that came up. People are asking, hey, has your principal told you what you're going to do? And some people have had conversations with the principals and some haven't. I don't think, maybe that is our role here, is to push the district. Can you get some clarification so it's consistent for all our schools? I don't know if we're going to get the answer in time for, coming this budget cycle we're going through. But you would think, because the money's supposed to be here, but no one's seen it.
Mimota, you've got your hand up too. Can you go ahead?
Yeah, Vicki, I had a question. I can't remember the acronym, the meeting of budget, yeah.
SBAC, at the SBAC or the P&O?
P&O,
Uh-huh.
yeah, with you. At SBAC, did they discuss the gardening programs?
I
I'm
don't think so.
trying to remember.
Because supposedly the
I don't
district
remember that.
lost a lot of, lost the grant for it. And so a lot of, yeah, I know they're trying to work out funding it, but it would affect gardening and food programs. I
Very
believe.
interesting. I think at SBAC right now, we're just talking about things that we want to cut, not new things that we potentially want to fund. However, that would be another thing that would probably come back to PTAs, if it's not getting funded somehow in the district. And I don't think that that was on our potential cuts. And so, but isn't it completely funded out of the sugar tax money, the soda tax money?
I'm not quite sure. I had just heard from someone and then spoken to, I don't know how much, I mean, I know this is being recorded. But yeah, I just have heard that some people got some hard letters and that it would affect district-wide, but I don't know how true that is. And I just thought you might have the insight since you're on that committee.
What I've heard is that everybody got pink slips because none of the funding is approved yet. And over and over, I've heard that doesn't mean those positions are getting cut, but that anything funded by BSEP, anything funded by PTA, anything funded by a grant, everybody got pink slips because of that until the budget is finalized, because by law, they have to do that if their job is potentially at risk. But that doesn't mean it's definitely going away. It just means that they have to find a funding source or wait for us to approve it. Like at the time, BSEP hadn't passed yet when they had to send those, right? And then the SSCs haven't committed what their funds are going to be. So they haven't approved their budgets yet. So all of those things have to be approved before decisions are made.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm aware of all that. I was just wondering if that had come, but I guess it hasn't. Because it was, yeah. Anyway, thanks.
Just doing a time check. We're 1 minute past 9. Any last comments? I'm going to write up these minutes so folks can forward to their sites.
When you send out the minutes, let's do a questions, comments for the superintendent, which is our next meeting.
Yes. Yes. Okay. That sounds great. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
I can add the link to the SBAC reductions thing from the board meeting if you want.
Yeah, I was just pulling that up myself to look at that.
I did a find and I didn't see any garden stuff.
Yeah, I don't see any garden stuff on it either. But that was only our first round.
I think
Vicky and Lindsay, since I'm on that with you guys, but honestly, I feel a bit lost in there. Do you guys mind if either one of you are at our next meeting? I mean, the superintendent will be at that one, but maybe, one of you could do an update from that as part of the meeting.
Yeah, I can do. Let me double check when our next meeting is. When is it?
April 22nd.
No, it's the 29th. We moved
Oh,
it.
we changed it? Okay, the 29th.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a.
Yeah. Actually, that'd be a big topic with her, right? Talk about cuts. Okay.
Yes. Have we gotten a calendar invite for that yet?
Not yet.
Okay, as of right now, I don't have anything conflicting, so I can be there if you remind me, because I do updates at 3 other meetings, so I'll have something written up that I'm happy to share.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that was almost wondering if those updates would be something that you'd be willing to, because I read.
I could email it, yeah.
I was like, this would be awesome for everyone, and I feel like I said, like I'm feeling like I'm just getting my feet under me in that meeting to understand what's happening. So
yeah, I'm happy if you send me an email reminder, I'm happy to email that to you when I do my updates.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. That'd be great. Okay.
Well, we'll just table all the other stuff that we didn't get to our next meeting. But thanks, everyone.
Thank you guys for all your work on this.
Yeah, thank you.
Was
Thank
there a
you,
lot of
Scott,
stuff we
for-
didn't get to?
We were going to talk about auctions, how people are doing with their fundraising, just to kind of share.
Oh, yeah, we're not doing an auction
Yeah.
or a raffle.
How about budget process? Like PTAs are having to approve their budgets, how that's going, planning.
Yeah, we haven't
year.
started that. Let's maybe on next agenda talk about elections. We can't get volunteers for anything, let alone people to fill in for board positions next year. That's going to be our toughest thing.
Yeah.
Just brutal.
Yeah. And what's interesting, sorry to keep people, but we were talking about events, right? We just had a Pi Day event and we probably had like 300 people at the event. Like people come to our events.
What is this Pi Day?
Pi Day? Yeah, we
4/11.
had we didn't have people to pull off a literacy night for our readathon. We're supposed to have a literacy night, so we ended up combining it with a Pi Day, and we got our lit coaches and our math coaches to help organize the event because we didn't have any parent volunteers to do it. But we had like 300 attendees, and we got like an author to come and do a reading. We got a band with the library ABC band or something to come sing, and then we had a pie eating contest where we had like 30 people make pies. But like we can't recruit anybody to like organize events, run events, or to take board positions. So
This is at Malcolm X.
Yeah, Malcolm X. One of the things that we've done in the past that we're trying to reinstitute is before the pandemic, we used to do something called Books and Bagels and Toasty Tales, where once a month parents would come in and eat with their kids. And we felt like that was a prime time for parents to get to know each other and for room parents to recruit parents. And we haven't done it since the pandemic. So we've started reinstituting that and then having the PTA offer coffee afterwards. And because parents are already there with their kids and trying to recruit people then. And we've gotten some people to sign up and say they're interested, but then when we follow up, we can't get commitments, but at least we're getting names on lists. So that's a start.
Yeah.
For anyone who wants an idea for a Pi Day thing, when I worked at St. Mary's College, their activity was that you could pie teachers. And you bought the pie, you had to buy the pie, which was like whipped cream, like in a pie shell. It was not.
Right. And that was like a little fundraiser. That's awesome. Yeah. So instead of a big fundraiser, I think we're going to do like a penny raffle at our spring fair, which is like April 20th. And then we might do a end of year ask, but we probably won't. It depends because we did quite well on our readathon and our MX fund at the beginning of the year. The other thing I wanted to ask people about is one of the big things we're struggling with is tipping off teachers and auxiliary staff. So like at Christmas and end of year, classroom parents get gifts for the teachers, but then like what about the drama teacher, the art teacher, the IAs in the classroom, the office staff, all of those people? And we're trying to come up with some consistent practice of what we do. Like, do we share the money we're collected? Do we make a general collection to give gift people? And we're really struggling with how to do that. And there's a disparity because like one teacher might get $300 and another teacher might get $900,
For all the adjunct staff and auxiliary people and all of them, BAM pools. So they pool the money
who
together.
collects that? Does the PTA collect it and pools it?
One person on, one
like
person
a
on
person
PTA
does
collects
it. Yeah. And then splits it.
So
And then
that-
do you split it equally or do you like split it depending on like who they are?
equal.
Because like, for
Equally.
example, our drama teacher teaches like every single grade, but then science only teaches fourth and fifth, or the music teacher, the people who teach violin are only there 2 days a week, doing violin. And then
everybody gets the same gift card.
Everyone gets the same thing. Yeah, that's interesting. And then the thought was too, if teachers are getting a $900 check, but we're giving a $50 gift card to the drama teacher, like that also seems kind of like not super equitable. So we've been that's what our board's been discussing. which might be something we could discuss it, you know, I'd love to hear what other people are doing. So good to hear about what's happening at BAM.
You know, maybe Vicky,
Yeah,
if you have
yeah, Lindsay,
space
yes.
to throw it out in
Lin-
the email list.
just
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Oh, yeah, that would be a good idea. For me, for BAM, I'm not on their PTA, but I just know how these things work because I do. But it's regular teachers, the room parents collect for regular teachers. And they fill out a whole thing of like, this is my favorite restaurant. This is
Yeah.
where I like to get gifts. Like, so
We
the
do
room
that
parent
too.
collects and that's different by teacher. And then it's just the auxiliary people. Everybody else gets and I think it's like $200 gift card for Amazon or something.
Oh, that's a really nice amount. We
so.
have a list of like 89 auxiliary people because we're such a big school. So even if we are collecting, you know, $5,000, it's like $50 a person or something. So
I think
I heard of one school that had the room parents pool the money and they split it for like everybody.
That was one of the things we talked about.
Yeah, so it was like, you know, then you didn't have the $50, $600 or $1,000.
Yeah.
Because I guess
Emerson does that by grade level. But
yeah.
I don't know. Things got really awkward. And this year we actually, like the grade parents, it was one person collecting and they collected for the auxiliary people and the teachers and they split it evenly amongst all of them. And so then I was like, well, what do I do now? Obviously I have to gift my own teacher. And then it's like my gift is coming from me. I'm like, it was not good, but we don't have volunteers.
You know, and I'll say like one of the things, this was a pandemic thing, but there were teachers that didn't have functional laptops and room parents was like, okay, let's all kick in so Miss So-and-so can get a laptop to be able to teach our children, you know, like, cause she was trying to do it from the school Chromebook, which is ridiculous, you know? And so I think that there are times when it's going to be different by teacher, no matter what we try and do, but I do like the ideas around trying to equate it as best possible. I think that's,
yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for staying and chatting. All right. Bye.
Good night.
Yeah.